Welcome to the Inside Scoop.
Making money moves.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Inside Scoop, the show where Joy Marie and I bring all things real estate and real estate adjacent for people who love homes, houses, finance, design, landscaping, and more.
All right. So we're super excited. Corey and I are super excited. Today we have a special guest with us, and it is Frank Hennessey of Premier Planning. Frank and I met years and years and years ago at the Phoenixville Chamber. And let's see, since then, he's been my financial planner ever since then. And now he's Corey's and Corey's family's financial planner. Yep. And let's see, Frank, you currently live in Phoenixville now, but you grew up in Havertown. You went to Cardinal O'Hara and Ursinus, right? So you're a local guy. You're a Philly guy through and through, right? And he's the oldest of three siblings with two younger sisters. You've been married to the sparkling Joanne for 30 years.
30 years.
And you have three kids, 25, 23, and 21. Yeah?
That's right. Yeah.
All right. So, and you are the co-founder of Premier Planning Group, a wealth management and corporate benefits firm. And you have been in this role since 1993?
Correct.
Awesome. Okay. And you wrote when we were kind of going back and forth that you have a passion for making a positive and lasting impact on successful families and businesses. I'm certainly I've
a recipient of that. Absolutely. For sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's important to me and to all of our team. So I appreciate you saying that. And I'm excited to be here. This is great. Hopefully I can bring some valuable knowledge to your listening base. You mentioned I went to Ursinus. Now, that was before 422 was built and before 476 was built, to show you kind of how old I am. But can you imagine this area before that?
Oh, yeah. We talk about all the time before Providence Town Center was built, just the big pile of dirt.
Yeah. How much development has happened.
And so I graduated in 1988. And shoot, back then we thought Ursinus was the westernmost part of the world. And if you drove past it, you'd fall off the face of the earth.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Especially growing up in Delco.
Yeah. Right. But yeah, so, and I got into this business June 6, 1988. So right after graduation. So I don't know anything else and do, this is where I live.
Yeah,
and
for
this
sure.
is what we do. But hey, I first have to acknowledge the great job, Joy Marie, that you and Corey and your team do on behalf of your clients.
Thanks.
Right? I mean, if you think about it, this is one of the largest transactions that many people, buying a home is one of the largest transactions that people will ever engage in. And there's so many different moving parts. And most people don't have the time, the interest, or the knowledge to really handle all those things. And you guys act not just as their realtor, but as their advocate, okay, guiding them through each of the decision-making processes, whether it's engaging with their banker, their lender, their CPA, or their financial advisor. Yep. I would feel good as your client knowing that you're right there with me, taking through each step of the way. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
It means a lot. It means a lot because we respect you, and so to have your respect is important to us.
Yeah, for sure. And Frank, as you know, we ask each guest, if you could sum yourself up in 5 words, what would they be? And your 5 key words were passionate, resolute, independent thinker, resourceful, and grateful. Those are powerful words, and we are so glad to have you here today.
Well, thank you. Independent thinker, I certainly don't know everything, so I like to ask questions. I've always told my kids you have to question everything. And I think that's what a liberal arts education meant to me. It's you don't take everything at face value because the internet said it or because I saw it on television. You have to ask questions. And similar in finances, if somebody's learning about how to buy a house or how to plan their finances, most of the success will come if you ask good questions, and it's got to make sense to you. Yep. Grateful. Yeah, you say grateful. I got to tell you, that's having a sense of appreciation, deep gratitude for where you are and where you want to be in life, to me, has been the most powering thing for me ever. And it's always good to appreciate, not to be complacent or content. You can always want to get to the next thing, but having a sense of gratitude is empowering. And, resourceful. We have to have a team behind us, right?
100%.
We have to have a team we work
That's a big word.
And those are some of the things that are important to me. So thanks for bringing that back to my attention.
Yeah. Well, we were happy to see those words because, truthfully, those words resonate with us. Yeah. That's words that we use for ourselves on the regular. But what we really want to talk about today, I mean, we could sit here and talk about how wonderful you are, and we would love to talk a little bit more about your family, and hopefully we get the opportunity to do that too. But what we want to talk about is how someone can borrow, I guess the question is, could I be my own bank? And there's a lot of people, and you have daughters that are 23 and 25 and a son who's 21, so they're going to be buying their first houses. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we have parents that are aging and maybe downsizing and things like that, but then there's everybody else in the middle as well. So a lot of people ask us whether or not they can borrow from their 401k to buy a house before they either sell the house they have or what they should do. And the truth is, we always advise them to speak to their financial planner. So since we have you here today, could you address a little bit about how someone might or use their 401k or their IRA or their whatever to borrow against?
Sure, happy to. And I think it makes sense to say that if you're talking about borrowing from your IRA or your 401k or cashing money in, it's not the first thing that you should be thinking about. But, in today's competitive marketplace, when you have to be an aggressive buyer, it's good to consider all sources, all potential sources. And there are some opportunities within your IRA or 401k to access money to help you put down a better down payment or make a better offer. But I think these are very delicate transactions that you need to approach cautiously because you could potentially trigger taxes and penalties, not to mention you're kind of depleting your future retirement savings. But there are opportunities nonetheless, and I think we kind of have to break them down. You mentioned IRA and 401k. Let's talk about the IRA first. So you have control over your IRA. It's not some former employer or current employer or some remote custodian. You have control over your IRA. So in theory, you can access it at any time. But you want to consider, if it's a traditional IRA, whenever you make a withdrawal from that IRA, that money will be income taxable to you and maybe put you in a higher tax bracket. It counts as income. Additionally, if you are younger than age 59 and a half, that money will also be subject to a 10% IRS penalty for early withdrawal. Now, in order to withdraw without that penalty, you need to qualify for an exception. And the first-time homebuyer exception, or I should say the homebuyer exception, to qualify for that, you must be a first-time homebuyer as defined by the IRS. And if you qualify for that, then you can potentially access up to $10,000 from your IRA without penalty.
Sure, that could be a huge savings for somebody.
Sure, and then if you're married, Corey, and your spouse has an IRA and he or she qualifies, then you can potentially access up to $20,000.
Okay.
Without the penalty, but it's still going to be subject to income taxes.
But not necessarily have to be repaid, correct?
Correct. Right.
That $10,000 per person type of thing.
Well, it's a good question. And your answer is right. That doesn't have to be paid, but we'll get to how you might want to repay it and how that could help you, maybe for even greater amounts. But that's some basic stuff for an IRA. Now, the rules are different for a Roth IRA. And distributions from a Roth are generally tax-free, provided you're age 59 and a half and you've had the Roth for at least 5 years. But if this isn't the case, then you would likely pay taxes and penalties on the growth of your Roth, not the principal or the amount that you contributed. And there is a first-time homebuyer exception of the $10,000, similar to the traditional IRA. But generally, a Roth is taxed less than a traditional IRA because you made the deposits with after-tax dollars. Right. And so I would look at the Roth before I would look at the traditional. But not a lot of people have a lot of money in Roth, or nor do they qualify. Now, one more thing. We talked about an IRA. We talked about a Roth.
Yeah.
Right.
You could be talking about an inherited IRA or the traditional, an inherited Roth or an inherited IRA, in which case the rules are even different and more complicated.
Difficult.
So suffice it to say,
that seems a little more rare. What about the 401k?
So the 401k. Well, hold on before we get there. And little known fact, you just mentioned it. It might have limited utility, but it could save you in a lot of taxes, and that is this. The IRS allows you to do a rollover from your IRA, and as long as you get that money back within 60 days to your IRA or a similar IRA, that money will not be subject to income taxes or penalties.
So somebody that gets a bonus from work, or they know they're going to get a bonus from a job, they could potentially borrow it and then pay themselves back when they get money.
So let me give you an example
Yeah.
this way. So a client of mine called me and said, "Hey Frank, you know my brother, he's downsizing. He's selling his primary residence. He's going to move into a retirement community, but it sounds like he's going to make a financial mistake. Can you talk to him?" Sure. And yes, he's selling his house and he's buying another house. But for some reason, they couldn't align the settlement dates in a favorable fashion. So he's actually got to settle and buy his new place before he settles in his other place.
Right.
And it kind of caught him off guard. It's not
Common.
what they discussed.
Yeah.
Right.
Happens a lot now.
Yeah.
Okay, so bottom line is he's about to take $150,000 out of his IRA and pay taxes on that. Well, we pointed out this IRS rule where what he can do is take the money out, help him buy the new place. In a couple weeks from now, when settlement occurs on his existing place, he can replenish. He can take those settlements and put the money back into his IRA.
Right.
Now, we're allowed to do this once per calendar year, but it's effectively giving yourself a short-term bridge loan.
Right.
Yeah.
And
To help you.
And you said 60 days?
Yeah, you have to get
60
the money
days.
back within 60 days, or you're going to be subject to income taxes. But I think you can start to feel like, hey, there's a lot of moving parts,
Yep.
and you should really talk to your financial advisor, your
course.
CPA, and even the custodian of the IRA assets to make sure you understand all the moving parts and whether or not you actually want to go through with this.
Right.
Okay.
Well, that's good to know. Yeah. Very great information.
Now, you mentioned the 401k. 401k is a little more straightforward. Now, you don't have access, you don't have control over your 401k like you do the IRA. So if you're a current participant in a plan, it's very hard to get money out. And there are no specific exemptions for a first-time home buyer. Now, but if you are 59 and a half, or with some plans 55, your plan may have the ability to give you an in-service distribution or in-service rollover. So you'd want to talk to your HR people or your benefits people at your 401k. Now, that's taking money out, but you can borrow from your 401k. And this can be a good thing. You can borrow from your 401k if your plan allows it, and most plans do. And so the IRS tells us that we can borrow up to $50,000 or half of your account balance, whichever is less. And if you do that, and if you'll pay it back, and you pay it back through your payroll reductions, just like you make your contributions, but that money that you borrowed will not be subject to taxes, nor will it be subject to penalty. And in fact, you'll be making payments back to your own account with interest. So yes, there you're operating as your own banker.
Right.
But you're paying for it somehow.
Well, you're paying yourself back.
Right.
You're paying yourself back competitive interest, and so which could be a good thing if the market's down. 'Cause
Down.
you
Yeah, it
if
depends
the
on the
market's
rate.
up, well, maybe you didn't make as much money, but you probably made in today's world 7.5% on the money that you borrowed. It's your asset, so you are operating as your own bank. So the point there is, borrowing from your 401k could be a way to pay down high interest, to improve cash flow, to improve your credit score, or to give you more money to make a more competitive offer and down payment on your bank. Now, one more thing we'll say about the 401k. If you have a 401k from a previous employer, one that you're not currently participating in, well, then you could roll that over to an IRA.
Right.
Then all the IRA rules apply that
Yeah.
we talked about, but you can't borrow from a previous employer's 401k plan.
Well, now you know why we say to everybody, please go talk to your financial planner.
And
It
Has
is
a lot of information for today.
and I didn't mean to get that verbose,
No,
but there's a lot of moving
everyone
parts,
asks.
right? And that's why you want to engage not just your advisor, but your accountant and
Yep.
whoever the custodian
Yep.
is, because you want to make sure you don't mess it up.
And I would say people ask at least once a month. So, this is really great information. Of course, we encourage anybody who has questions about these things to speak to their financial planner. And we, of course, refer Frank because he is wonderful and has done amazing things for us, and we trust him implicitly.
Great, awesome.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much,
Frank.
Frank.
Pleasure. Thank you for asking me, and keep up the great work with your clients.
All right, stay
Thanks.
tuned for part 2 coming next.